what was the most powerful thing at the end of the day was not radiation, but motherland, and that came out in their stories.
In 1986, Chernobyl's heart went dark, birthing tales that chill to this day. Think you know the story? Dive into 20 spine-tingling finds that still haunt its abandoned corners. The remnants of this disaster are marked by eerie anomalies and bizarre findings, each more bone-chilling than the last. Welcome to Chernobyl's eeriest mysteries. Number 20. Chernobyl's Mothman. In the days leading up to the Chernobyl disaster in 1986, a chilling legend emerged within the shadowy confines of the power plant's control room. Workers claimed to have witnessed a harrowing apparition known as the Black Bird of Chernobyl. This supernatural entity bore a disturbing resemblance to the infamous Mothman, a cryptid associated with catastrophic events. The eerie sightings described a creature rising above the Chernobyl-Pripyat horizon just prior to the explosion. Those unfortunates enough to encounter this winged enigma were haunted by terrifying dreams and menacing phone calls. Like its Mothman counterpart, it seemed that the blackbird was an omen of impending calamity. The Mothman, a cryptid residing in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, is described as a human-bird hybrid with a colossal 10-foot wingspan, grayish complexion, and piercing red glowing eyes. Its sightings from 1966 to 1967 ominously culminated in the collapse of the Silver Bridge, a tragedy claiming 46 lives. 33 years after the Chernobyl catastrophe, these legends persist and grow. Archaeologist Robert Maxwell, having ventured into the exclusion zone, attests to the endurance of the Blackbird myth. Reports from Chernobyl personnel and nearby residents suggest a bizarre series of events linked to encounters with this dark, mutated creature. Number 19. Toys. While the Mothman has seen media popularity, so have dolls. Horror movies have long capitalized on the eerie, unsettling aura of malevolent dolls brought to life. Yet when dolls are abandoned amid the aftermath of a nuclear disaster, their eerie presence takes on an even more haunting dimension. In the wake of the Chernobyl tragedy, the 49,000 evacuated residents of Pripyat left behind more than just homes. They left behind cherished childhood companions. Abandoned in a hurry, dolls were left behind where children last played with them: homes, schools, and nurseries. Dolls can appear creepy when left in abandoned places in the dark. But when bombarded with years of radiation, this effect is amplified even more. These dolls, left to decay in the radioactive aftermath, show how tragic this human disaster was. Some dolls bear the marks of severe radiation damage, their already eerie appearance made even more disturbing. Others, seemingly staged for future dark tourists, assume odd postures, representing a chilling snapshot of the past. Radiated faces and empty stares peer from windows while wearing gas masks, or they clutch each other in for comfort. Some repose peacefully amidst the catastrophe's ruins, while others lie in slumber, eyes perpetually open in cribs. But the desolation of this place may lead you to think absolutely no one lives here. But that's not the case. Number 18. Grandmothers. In the haunting aftermath of the Chernobyl nuclear disaster, a small, stubborn group of individuals, mostly women, has defied the desolation of the exclusion zone. Decades have passed, yet they remain. The majority dwell at least 6 miles from the irradiated reactor, exposing themselves to lingering radioactivity. These resilient souls are predominantly elderly, having declined government-mandated resettlement, choosing instead to stake their fate in the shadow of Chernobyl. These self-settlers are known as spine-tingling. They live on the edge of society. While the government extends modest support, their sustenance largely arises from their own resourcefulness, by raising livestock, hunting, and cultivating crops. Remarkably, many spine-tingling reach their 70s and 80s, but there are only a few of them, as the rest have passed away of old age. But there's an added mystery here about the spine-tingling. Their lifespans, despite the perilous environment, average a remarkable 1 to 2 decades longer than those who chose to relocate. In the wake of the Chernobyl catastrophe, the Soviet government evacuated a staggering 116,000 individuals, Approximately 1,200 brave souls ventured back into the exclusion zone over the ensuing months and years. A majority, aged 48 and older, persists today, with women constituting 80% of them. Their awareness of risk is keen, although they've endured endless explanations of radiation's perils. Despite contaminated soil, they cultivate crops. They raise livestock despite the dangers of consuming irradiated meat. Mostly in their 70s or 80s, they remain sturdy, defying adversity with their indomitable spirit, perhaps warding off radiation with sheer determination. Number 17. Dark tourism. While some may choose to live here, others settle for just paying a visit. In July of 2019, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky unveiled plans to transform the Chernobyl site into an official tourist attraction. Zelensky's vision aimed to breathe new life into this Ukrainian territory, a decision driven in part by increased visitor numbers following the HBO miniseries. These regions, untouched since the disaster, remain highly contaminated. Chernobyl can be reasonably safe, according to doctors, but this depends on visitor conduct. This relative safety has led to the emergence of dark tourism. Dark tourism is the phenomenon of visiting places associated with death and suffering. Dark tourism has cast Chernobyl as a top destination, quite literally one of the hottest spots in Ukraine. Ukraine International Airlines introduced aerial tours on the eve of the catastrophic event's commemoration. Passengers aboard a jetliner for a panoramic view of the abandoned nuclear plant and Pripyat. The tour hovers just above the minimum 3,000-foot altitude permitted over Chernobyl, offering a chance to capture a selfie with the pilot. While ground-based tours require hazmat suits, aerial excursions have surged in popularity, with the premiere selling out within days. The allure of Chernobyl and Pripyat persists as people continue to visit these sites illegally. They don't care about the danger or the hefty fines associated with their dark obsession, because this place holds many curiosities, including mutated animals. Number 16. Mutated animals. After the Chernobyl disaster in 1986, many wondered about its impact on wildlife. People suffered, with deaths and birth defects. But something surprising happened in the exclusion zone. Wildlife started coming back sooner than expected. Scientists were initially concerned, thinking it might take decades or even centuries for life to recover. Yet, nature proved resilient. Wildlife in the zone adapted remarkably well. However, radiation didn't spare all. A decade later, evidence emerged of birth defects in both wild and domestic animals left behind. Some had multiple heads, extra limbs, or other anomalies. There were even peculiar cases, like a two-faced cat or a calf with legs growing on its back. Despite these challenges, life has made a surprising comeback. Even plant life, like the red forest, showed signs of radiation stress, but it too has made a comeback. Number 15. The red forest. The red forest in Chernobyl stands as an enigma within the exclusion zone, luring both scientific intellects and adventurous tourists. Often referred to as the Rusty Forest in Ukraine, this locale poses profound perils. Encircling the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, it absorbed tons of radiation in the wake of the catastrophic event. But what unfolded there? April 28, 1986, etched a somber mark in human history. The Chernobyl nuclear power plant's explosion birthed the Chernobyl disaster, releasing radioactive contamination into the atmosphere and vast expanses of the environment. The section of pine forest nearest the plant bore the initial brunt, enduring the most substantial radiation dose. Countless trees withered instantaneously, their fate sealed by the radioactive imprint, which turned them a rusty red hue, giving the forest its name. The forest's soil harbors the highest radiation levels of the entire forest area. It contains 90% of the radiation. Unfortunately, plants and insects absorb these toxins in the soil. While the disaster happened decades ago, there are still lingering perils, such as forest fires that could release radioactive substances into the atmosphere. Ukraine meticulously monitors radiation levels, conducts radionuclide assessments, trains firefighters, and implements wildfire prevention measures to stop this from happening. While radiation is waning, the region endures as one of the world's most radioactive places. Understandably, humans stay clear of this place. On the other hand, the Red Forest has witnessed a remarkable resurgence in wildlife, yet approaching said wildlife is not a good idea. Number 14. Deadly meat. The forest within the exclusion zone tells one of the rare success tales from the Chernobyl catastrophe. Before the disaster, wildlife in the region was scarce, a typical situation in areas inhabited by humans where our coexistence with wild creatures tends to be rocky. Once humans evacuated the exclusion zone, the animals started to reproduce. Today, the Chernobyl area boasts a surprisingly unmutated and diverse ecosystem. These animals appear entirely ordinary, but dining on them will kill you. In the early 90s, shortly after the incident, wild boars near Chernobyl showed radiation levels over 2,000 times the safety limit. Even today, consuming game caught inside the exclusion zone, and even in regions as distant as Sweden, remains perilous. Radiation levels can surpass safe limits by several dozen times. Although it may sound grim, for those wild boars and bison, it's perhaps the ultimate survival strategy. They've made themselves radioactive, prompting human predators to steer clear. Number 13. The elephant's foot. Up next is one of the most radioactive objects on the planet. At the core of the Chernobyl power plant, a structure looms. This is known as the elephant's foot, capable of delivering death in mere minutes. Hidden deep within Reactor 4's basement, this mammoth amalgamation comprises melted concrete, sand, and intensely radioactive nuclear fuel. During a scientific expedition, radiation was recorded at lethally high levels, spelling doom for anyone in proximity for more than fleeting moments. To investigate the source of these perilous readings, researchers fixed a camera to a mobile contraption and guided it toward the emanating signals. What they encountered became known as the elephant's foot. The elephant's foot wields such lethal power that within a mere 30 seconds of exposure, dizziness and fatigue set in. Extend that to 2 minutes, and your cells commence hemorrhaging. At the ominous 5-minute mark, survival becomes an impossibility. This moniker, elephant's foot, stems from its wrinkled appearance, a reference to the creased skin on an elephant's leg and foot. In the 1980s, the elephant's foot spewed approximately 10,000 Roentgen of radiation per hour. This was enough to extinguish life within 2 minutes for anyone standing a mere 3 feet away. By 2001, the rate had dwindled to roughly 800 Roentgen per hour, but it still remains perilous. Number 12. Nuclear shadows. Moving on, while most of us actively avoid nuclear disaster sites, some daring souls want to sneak in and add a splash of color. Hailing from places like Belarus and Germany, these graffiti artists don't care about deadly radiation reports. Ignoring the warnings, they have infiltrated the exclusion zone over time. Armed with an array of vibrant spray paint cans, they've left behind a striking mix of artistry in Pripyat and its vicinity. Some are hauntingly beautiful, others profoundly unsettling. The city of Pripyat hosts much of this captivating graffiti, featuring silhouettes that pay tribute to the evacuated residents who vanished on April 27, 1986, the day following the nuclear catastrophe. For instance, within one building, a small girl with bows in her pigtails reaches up to a light switch, while outside, a little boy appears poised to surprise someone, pulling his toy truck. Other walls showcase silhouettes of people seemingly engaged in dance. In a different scene, 3 kids are suspended in mid-air as if propelled by an invisible trampoline while holding one another. Whether in joy or terror is left to the viewer's interpretation. Many observers can't help but draw parallels between these silhouettes and the eerie nuclear shadows etched by the victims of the atomic bombings that ended World War II in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. While we can thank the artist's creativity for these stories, this area still has a plethora of original tales, such as the abandoned Carnival of Pripyat. Number 11. Abandoned Carnival. The Pripyat amusement park holds a little-known tale. The park was not finished on the day of the disaster, which was on April 26, 1986. It was just 5 days away from its official May Day opening. Now it stands as a poignant symbol of the Chernobyl disaster, a haunting reminder of unfulfilled dreams. The park promised classic carnival delights, an 85-foot Ferris wheel, a parachute ride, bumper cars, boat swings, and a shooting gallery. Similar parks of culture and rest existed across Soviet cities. Some still thrive today. However, the Pripyat amusement park never got its moment in the sun, though it briefly welcomed visitors on April 27 before evacuation orders were issued. Today, the park remains frozen in time, a life unlived. Bumper cars sit idle, leaves swirling around them. The Ferris wheel stands motionless, its paint chipping and fading. Bright spots punctuate the yellow canopies, but the overall impression is one of rusty, neglected orange, a lonely reminder of a park that never opened. The amusement park represents a melancholic reality. It shows us the unrealized hopes and joys that could have been. Number 10. Stalkers. Chernobyl's stalkers constitute a peculiar subculture stemming from the complex interplay of Soviet history, American-style commercialism, corruption, and economic turmoil in Russia and Ukraine. Some experts attribute their emergence to these factors. Stalkers are individuals who unlawfully breach the 621-square-mile exclusion zone, often driven by morbid curiosity or fun. They're similar to rubberneckers who slow down to look at accidents as they're driving by. Police chase these youths for their illegal activities, but these post-apocalyptic romantics take joy in the challenge of sneaking into the zone. It can't fully be explained what attracts them to the zone so much. Is it the excitement of going where you're not supposed to be, or the curiosity of what lies in an area riddled with radiation? This phenomenon received an odd sort of legitimacy in 2007 with the release of the video game Stalker. The game's creators aimed to raise awareness about Chernobyl worldwide while crafting an engaging video game. The game achieved success. Yet this success led to even more groups of people venturing into the real Chernobyl, a consequence that the developers did not intend. Perhaps these stalkers would pay a visit to Hospital Number 126 while inside the zone. Number 9. Hospital Number 126. Located on Druzhby-Narodov Street within the Pripyat micro-district, this hospital complex boasted an expansive array of medical facilities. The main wing, accompanied by clinics and outpatient units, painted a picture of preparedness in this freshly minted Soviet model city. Services included dental care, maternity support, infectious disease treatment, and even a morgue. On any normal day, this hospital would be bustling with activity. But the unimaginable events of April 26, 1986, changed everything. Following the catastrophic meltdown of reactor number 4, this hospital became the last hope for 237 plant workers, firefighters, and soldiers suffering from severe radiation exposure. Tragically, many would never leave its walls alive. According to a 2006 World Health Organization report, 28 firefighters and rescue personnel succumbed to radiation-related illnesses within the first 3 months. The victims' highly contaminated clothing was stored in the hospital's basement, where lethal radiation levels persist to this day. Eventually, survivors were transported to Moscow, home to the sole facility equipped to treat such severe radiation cases. Hospital documents and medical equipment lay scattered in chaotic disarray. The basement, registering as the most radiation-soaked spot in the city, had to be swiftly abandoned due to escalating radiation levels. To this day, tales of hauntings linger around this forgotten place. During a paranormal investigation of Chernobyl by the Destination Truth team from the Sci-Fi Channel, eerie human-like figures were captured on video surveillance, adding to the mystique of this hospital. Number 8. Radiation-eating fungi. Next, we have a positive discovery from this tragedy, a discovery that could save lives. See, the Earth has a protective shield. This includes a magnetic field and an atmosphere guarding us from harmful cosmic radiation, neutrinos, and solar rays. However, astronauts aboard the International Space Station face a daunting challenge. They are exposed to radiation levels 20 times higher than those on our planet. This poses risks to both crew members and the station's sensitive electronics. To address this issue, NASA turned its attention to an unexpected hero, Cladosporium sphaerospermum, a fungus thriving amidst the irradiated remnants of the Chernobyl disaster. Astonishingly, this fungus was found to feed on radiation through radiosynthesis. NASA decided to conduct experiments with it in space. Over the course of a month on the ISS, these experiments yielded remarkable results. Cladosporium was observed harnessing melanin to convert deadly gamma rays into chemical energy. This newfound ability holds promise for future space exploration. Researchers hope that the fungus can serve as a shield against radiation, safeguarding both equipment and crew during extended space missions. Additionally, it may play a vital role in cleaning up radioactive waste, offering a beacon of hope for our planet's environmental challenges. These fungi would have been extremely useful had they been employed during Chernobyl's cleanup. A cleanup that left a graveyard of robots. Number 7. Robot Graveyard. The Chernobyl cleanup was a daunting task, and the Soviets initially turned to robots for help. Even a lunar rover designed for moon exploration was called into action. They also borrowed a robot known as Joker from West Germany. The Soviets assured them that these robots could handle the radiation levels of Chernobyl. The Soviets claimed that the contamination coming out of the reactor was only 2,000 Roentgen. However, this information turned out to be grossly inaccurate. When Joker was deployed on the rooftop, it barely lasted a few minutes before succumbing to the extreme radiation. It met its demise in a forest far from the infamous Claw Graveyard, forming a unique resting place for irradiated robots. Outside Pripyat, there lies a sprawling graveyard for vehicles used in the disaster's aftermath. These vehicles, now highly radioactive, cannot be touched, repaired, or driven. They silently decay amidst the forest. Tourists may, at times, gain access to this eerie vehicle graveyard, depending on the discretion of Ukrainian authorities. While this graveyard persists to this day, there are some remnants of Chernobyl that were completely wiped out, such as the small village of Kapachi. Number 6. Kapachi. Prior to the Chernobyl reactor explosion, Kapachi was home to around 1,000 people. However, after the catastrophic event, a stark decision was made to erase Kapachi completely. This meant not only burying the inhabitants, but wiping away the houses, streets, and all traces of habitation. A perplexing choice, given that Chernobyl and Pripyat remained standing, albeit deserted. Why this drastic measure? Kapachi was situated just 2.5 miles from the ill-fated reactor, making it the closest settlement. When the evacuation of areas within a 6-mile radius around the nuclear plant commenced, Kapachi was among the first to be cleared. Survivors clung to hopes of returning home, but these dreams were shattered by the overwhelming radiation. The levels were so hazardous that living in any house in the village was perilous. Therefore, each building was razed, and the land was piled high with earth and mounds for safety. Consequently, Kapachi vanished, existing only on maps. The Chernobyl reactor explosion drastically altered the region. In the years that followed, many locals attempted to return, believing their villages were somewhat safer due to their proximity to Pripyat and Chernobyl. However, in Kapachi, a chilling reality awaited. It had been irreversibly contaminated by radiation, infiltrating every nook and cranny of its wooden structures, even seeping into the ground and deep basements. The demolition of Kapachi was a painful necessity to safeguard against the worldwide spread of radiation. Though once a place of happiness and beauty, its demolition became a reminder of the sacrifices made to protect the world. It's time for today's subscriber pick. One of our subscribers recently shared a photo with us. It's absolutely mind-blowing and confusing. When we think about mutated animals, we hardly consider monstrosities like these. The photo shows an otherworldly creature that appears to have been shaped by the effects of nuclear radiation in a location similar to Chernobyl. This creature towers above everything in its vicinity, making the people standing next to it appear tiny. It's a sight resembling a being straight out of our wildest imaginations. Now, we have no idea what this is, but this is where you, our viewers, come into play. Could you tell us what this creature is and where was it found? What is it even called? How does it even exist? We eagerly await your ideas and theories in the comments section. We're excited to hear your thoughts. All right, it's time to dive into our next entry. Number 5. Soviet propaganda. Pripyat once teemed with 50,000 souls. A mere 36 hours after the Chernobyl disaster struck, the entire population was hurriedly evacuated from their homes. Residents were assured a brief absence and advised to pack nothing more than identification and a change of clothing. However, the reality was significantly different. Pripyat's return became a promise that Soviet officials were a mere 23,999 years off. What adds a unique layer of intrigue to this abrupt departure, followed by permanent abandonment, is that Pripyat is frozen in a period of Soviet-era Ukraine. It's a snapshot of history, albeit a rapidly deteriorating, radioactively tainted one. In a way, Pripyat's charm lies in this eerie time capsule. Soviet propaganda can be found in every corner, such as a room full of portraits of Soviet leaders, a statue of an unwavering soldier who gazes sternly upon the town's crumbling decay, and walls bearing disintegrating murals. These murals, designed to remind the long-vanished populace of the glory of living under Soviet rule, now stand as fading echoes of a bygone era. Like the Soviet Empire itself, Pripyat has crumbled, leaving behind only a trace. However, the Soviet Empire's struggle to contain this disaster can still be found in the history books. One such attempt was the sarcophagus. Number 4. The sarcophagus. They toiled through 206 nightmarish days to erect the initial sarcophagus using 400,000 cubic meters of concrete and 7,300 tons of metal framework. They worked in 3 shifts, but only for 5 to 7 minutes each turn due to the danger. After finishing, they would discard their clothes. These people were known as the liquidators. Nearly 1 million men and women from across the Soviet Union joined the initial cleanup and containment effort. Helicopters dropped sand, lead, and other materials over the reactor to quell the fire and contain radiation. Coal miners delved beneath the reactor's core to facilitate the injection of liquid nitrogen for cooling the nuclear fuel. Others decontaminated areas and evacuated civilians. Although reports vary, some suggest that thousands of these liquidators perished in their courageous endeavors. Consensus holds that most endured severe long-term illnesses from acute radiation exposure. Despite the liquidators' heroic endeavors, the initial sarcophagus was never intended as a lasting solution, demanding a more permanent fix. However, clarity about the site's actual status remained elusive until the Soviet Union's collapse. Amid the ensuing turmoil, the International Atomic Energy Agency swiftly initiated a project to unravel the mysteries of Soviet-designed reactors. The demand for a more permanent solution resulted in the creation of the new sarcophagus. Number 3. The new sarcophagus. The nuclear plant itself is the most terrifying aspect of the exclusion zone. Until recently, it relied solely on a colossal sarcophagus, crafted from 14 million cubic feet of concrete to shield the world from the 4th reactor's catastrophic failure. While construction workers toiled in brief shifts, this only prevented them from sudden death. The amount of exposure they faced in those brief shifts still doomed them to a life of agonizing, cancerous suffering. The initial sarcophagus wasn't exactly proficient at preventing radiation leaks. This was evident from the mutated farm animals. It took engineers 2 decades to devise a better solution. One was built off-site, which required transportation. Transporting the new sarcophagus required 18 ships and 2,500 trucks to ferry it from Italy to Chernobyl. Finally installed in November of 2016, it now looms over the decimated reactor, frustrating visitors hoping to infiltrate the less secure, older version for eerie photos. Instead, they have to settle for the gas masks of middle school number 3. Number 2. Gas masks. Middle school number 3 is renowned for housing the most photographed collection of gas masks in Pripyat. In a decaying room, gas masks blanket the floor, and an eerie doll with a gas mask sits on a stool. If you envision the grim scenario behind these gas masks littering the floor, you might imagine horrifying scenes of panicked children donning them as a deadly radiation cloud descends. However, the reality is far less dramatic. Most of these masks were safely stored during the disaster, likely untouched by the school's occupants. They were probably removed months or years afterward. A closer look reveals missing filters, likely scavenged by looters in pursuit of the trace amounts of silver inside. Number 1. The claw. Our final entry is a piece of metal that should be avoided at all costs. It is known as the claw. The claw is an ominous piece of machinery. It lies isolated in a desolate pocket of Pripyat's outskirts. In the aftermath of the catastrophe, workers, uncertain of a safe disposal site due to its extreme radioactivity, abandoned it deep within the forest, far from any paths, hoping it would remain hidden forever. Locating the claw isn't easy, known only to a handful of official guides. Yet very few tourists seek permission to approach this highly contaminated relic. It has become a haunting artifact of a tragedy that unfolded dozens of years ago. Like much in Chernobyl, even discarded radioactive machinery has the power to evoke horror and morbid fascination. Within the zone today, many objects can be lethal upon prolonged contact, but the claw surpasses all in danger. Unlike other hazards, it sits openly in a forest clearing, a silent, potent threat for eternity. Thanks for watching. See you next time.